Hey everyone, it's Ryder from Skip. It's July 4th. Hope you're doing well and happy 4th of July. Important and quick video today. Lots of news out of the SBA last week, namely the Restaurant Revitalization Program closed down. There was an extension of the $100 million Community Navigator pilot program, and most importantly, massive increases in targeted and supplemental EIDL grant approvals. It's the largest one-week change in targeted and supplemental approvals since these programs started. Increases of over 30% in both. I hope many of you have received these. Of course, we are still writing in, still pushing the SBA and Congress to consider changing the low-income provision because there's still plenty of money left for $10,000 and $5,000 grants. And of course, we're expecting news on the EIDL loan increases this coming week. I did a video on that yesterday talking about the 4506T requirement and what might change this week in terms of requirements from the SBA to speed things up on the EIDL loan increases. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you want to show your support, feel free to hit subscribe and like this video. It really means so much to our entire team. First the news, then the data. SBA Administrator Isabel Guzman announces the closure of the RRF. This was 2 days ago. The $28.6 billion RRF provided desperately needed relief to more than 100,000 restaurants and other food and beverage businesses across the nation, with significant funding going to our hardest hit underserved businesses. 100,000 restaurants and food and beverage businesses is a lot, but there's plenty that were left out. I'd love to hear in the comments if you were left out from the RRF. We knew it was going to be extremely competitive. You know, certain groups had a 2-week priority window to apply. And here's the big takeaway here. There were 278,000 submitted eligible applications, representing over $72.2 billion in requested funds. Okay, that's massive. That means only 36% of eligible businesses that applied received funding. 36%. So the majority of businesses unfortunately did not receive any RRF funding. It's extremely disappointing for many of you. It just goes to show you the popularity of the program. Meanwhile, with the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, there's still a good amount of money left over in that program. It's much less competitive than the RRF, but here are some of the stats. $7.5 billion sent to women-owned businesses, $1 billion to veteran-owned businesses, $6.7 billion to social and economically disadvantaged owned businesses. Also, the average size of grant awards to applicants was $283,000. That is massive. Think about that. $283,000 is the average. When we looked at the EIDL loans, and these are loans from last year, the average was around 50,000, something like that, because there's a massive long tail of one-person, two-person businesses that got a little amount of funding, not a lot. But look at this, 283,000 grants. These are grants. So of those over 100,000 businesses, the average grant award is 283. Only 2.2% of approved dollars were 50K and under. 4.9% of approved dollars for 50 to 100K, and all the rest 50K and above. I mean, that is incredible. If you don't know how it worked, basically the RRF would cover the gap in revenue between your 2019 and 2020 revenue, minus any PPP loans, which are also forgivable. Basically, the RRF would say, we got you. We're going to cover any gap. So if you made $10 million in 2019 and $5 million in 2020, and let's say you didn't get any PPP funding, there you go. Your RRF is $5 million. I mean, think about that. So many of you watching this channel are just trying to get 10K targeted or 5K supplemental or your EIDL loan increase. Many of you don't fall into this bucket. I just point this out because it shows a lot of the variability in how these programs were designed. Again, these were designed. Again, the structure of this was voted on by Congress. And I think it's great to help so many restaurants across the country. But it just goes to show you, number one, there was tons of demand for this program. More restaurants need more help. And number two, there's plenty of other business owners who could use a fraction of this amount to help them survive, to help them grow, to help them bring back employees. Would love to hear what you think about this in the comments below. Here we go again, as outlined by Congress. Restaurants and bars were eligible for economic aid equal to their pandemic-related revenue loss, with a cap of $10 million per business and $5 million per location. The funds were available for certain eligible uses like payroll and rent. The RRF application platform will remain open for the next 2 weeks to allow participants to check their status, address payment corrections, or ask questions. The SBA will disable access to the platform on July 14th, 2021. With the closure of this, the SBA will continue to deliver economic aid through the EIDL, through the targeted and supplemental advances, and Community Navigator pilot program, which is a great seg into this. SBA announces extension of the $100 million grant Community Navigator pilot program to July 23rd, 2021. So this is mainly for nonprofits, for cities, for states I can't qualify as a YouTuber, even though we've helped over 5 million people just on our YouTube channel here. But the whole idea is to help businesses who need help navigating a lot of these SBA programs, how to get funding, how to get resources. If you're curious about that, we have more information on this on our blog. Speaking of on our blog, we just put this up yesterday. Should you buy a house in 2021? Many of you may be thinking about this, maybe thinking about relocating, maybe you already have. This is a big topic. I'm going to do an in-depth video on this soon, but we put in a lot of research here on factors impacting the housing market this year, next year, some signals to look for. This is on the Skip app. Hello Skip in the App Store and Google Play. Go download it, it's free. Let me get to the EIDL data. It's what you're all waiting for. First the bad news, then the good news. For everyone waiting for 10K and 5K, that is very good news. But with EIDL loans, well, this is the strange part right here. Look at this number right here. EIDL's approved 3,809,066. This is June 24th's data, so last week's data. Now look at the data from July 1st, 3,808,371 approvals. So in case you missed it, the EIDLs approved has somehow gone down. I'm unclear as to how that could have happened. Maybe they denied some people, so now the net number is less than it was the week before. Overall, that's not a good signal. It doesn't show much growth there in terms of new EIDLs approved and EIDL loan increases. But I won't harp on that because look at this change right here. 193,000 targeted advances were funded as of June 24th. This week, it jumped to 251,000. That is a massive jump. That's the largest jump we've seen since the program started. That's around 60,000 new targeted advances funded last week. And that's an increase of 30%. So if we graph this, and we were graphing these for a while, but I didn't put up the new numbers yet, but that is a 30% spike in approvals in targeted advances. Now $2 billion have been approved, still less than 10% of the total available funding for the targeted advances. And there's an even bigger jump with the supplemental targeted advances. This is the 5K increase, allowing people to get up to $15,000. 127,000 were approved as of last week. As of this week, it jumped to 169,000. That's an increase of 33%. And here is the last point I want to make on that. Of everyone who's gotten the targeted EIDL advance, aka topped up to the full 10K, 67% of those people, 67% of these 251,000 have been also approved for the additional $5,000. So think about that. 2/3 of people who've gotten the targeted have also gotten the supplemental. So if you are waiting for your supplemental, keep that in mind. Of course, many of you are still in the bucket of you don't qualify based on the legislation. As always, if you want to support us, not only subscribe here, but go follow us on Twitter. We wrote a letter a few weeks ago to Isabel Guzman to encourage her to say, look, the people want these changes. There's still $28 billion left in this pot of money. Rather than give it away to some other program, let's try to work with Congress to get this money to folks who need it, to the millions of small business owners who could use the extra 10K or the extra 5K. And I'll bring back up the RRF once more. This is kind of apples oranges here. We're talking about 10K topping up. So for many of you, it's an additional 9K, let's say. And we're talking about the RRF. Only 2% of all of the grants were 50K and under. 70% of all of the grants, if you are a restaurant owner, were $350,000 or more. I mean, think about that. There are so many types of businesses. If you happen to fall in the food and beverage industry and you were lucky enough to get an RRF, you massively benefited. Only around 1/3 of businesses who applied here received RRF, so everyone else is kind of screwed at this point. In my opinion, that's a huge disparity when we look at these programs here. Like, there's probably a legitimate business out there that's trying to get $9,000. Meanwhile, another business in another industry, maybe with similar financials, received $350,000 or $1 million or $2 million or $5 million. That's what the data shows here, a massive discrepancy. Would love to hear what you think. Most importantly, have a great 4th of July. Thanks so much for subscribing and supporting our channel. Stay well, stay healthy, and I'll see you tomorrow.